It's not uncommon to have romantic fantasies about people other than your partner. It's not just normal, it can even enhance a relationship. That is, unless those fantasies cross the line, which is what I'm going to talk about in this video. So, in a long-term relationship, a marriage, or any long-term committed relationship, romance can depart and sex can then follow. From the outside, it might seem like these couples have a perfect or near perfect relationship. They might partner well in work, raising kids, entertaining with other couples, and just plain building a life together that to everyone on the outside, it looks like a perfect or a near perfect relationship. But I can tell you that in my 30 years of seeing couples in couples counseling, one of the biggest issues that gets them into therapy is when they have not been having sex and one or the other of them begins to feel neglected, rejected, or they may have regret about years wasted in not having a sexual marriage. So, the lack of sex often happens insidiously. It may start to decline as early as after the wedding or after their first child is born. Maybe it begins when personal stressors take over. They may take over in a way that the person is just consumed and they can't think about sex, they can't give themselves pleasure. Or it may start as late as after a woman goes through menopause and experiences dryness and pain with sex. We know life is difficult and it's often draining and it can take a big toll on our energy. And once we get overwhelmed with responsibilities, we try to use control to keep things together. What does that control look like? It can, unfortunately, devolve into being snarky, snappy, or stingy. But admitting this to ourselves can be threatening. So we compensate for those resentments or hurt feelings by making everything look more perfect on the outside so that no one will guess how empty we feel on the inside. Now we're ripe for an effective distraction from having to think about these feelings of discouragement. Enter stage left, a coworker, a friend, or a neighbor who listens to our feelings with rapt attention. With each interaction, new confidences are shared, just as we used to do with our partners when we were first falling in love and in the early years. One of the best feelings in the world is to feel listened to and to feel interesting to someone else. We feel our vitality coming back, coming alive again from that dormant state, from that deep freeze that it has been in, because romance and vitality are intimately tied together. Meanwhile, our partner is oblivious, or if they do suspect that a flirtation has progressed to a full-fledged emotional affair, or even further, they become gaslighted, saying that they're crazy or they have nothing to worry about, some such thing. Most relationships require that couples discuss and come to mutual agreements about fidelity issues such as flirtation, porn, or time spent with others that a spouse may feel are a threat to them. When one partner strays, it's often because these difficult discussions haven't happened, whether out of fear, denial, or just plain self-centeredness. The affair ends up coming like a bolt from the blue to the betrayed partner when they find out. Of course, It's never okay to violate the fundamental trust of your relationship by having an emotional or a sexual affair, or committing other indiscretions like visiting a sex worker or getting a happy ending massage. But it is each partner's responsibility to check in with one another about where you're both at with regard to your sex life or lack of sex life. So when I've seen couples who come in for therapy to repair the damage that's come from an affair, the betrayed partner will often say, "I had no idea. They never mentioned they were unhappy," or "I assumed we were on the same page." Other times the problem is right out in the open with years of fighting about sex. As with any kind of secrecy, that will take a toll too. So it's really important to get into counseling early if something like this is suspected, or if you're beginning to cross that line, before real damage is done. There's no doubt that affairs create deep pain and a lot of collateral damage for years to come. Even so, after the crisis has died down, infidelity can, and I know this is hard to believe, but it can reignite the love that you once felt for each other. Because taking the risk to process and work through the betrayal and acknowledging how close you came to losing your relationship allows us to come back to remembrance of the love that drew us together before. We are all multi-layered beings with complex feelings and needs. We're especially vulnerable when it comes to our sexuality. To protect yourself and your relationship, don't neglect to have those difficult conversations when you're aware that you haven't had sex for a long time. Make sure that you don't let fear and denial and just avoidance behavior stop you from connecting to your partner, making sure that, are you really on the same page? How are you feeling with our physical relationship, with our intimacy? And make sure that you talk to your partner about that. And if you're the partner who feels neglected, or you begin to sense these feelings growing in you that you just want more from your relationship, it's really time to have that difficult discussion, because if you wait, it's going to be so much harder, and often that stage left person comes along, and then it's going to be really hard to go back. But the good news is, I can tell you this: couples who come into counseling after they're aware of the affair and they've come clean about it, and they get in and they say, let's talk about whether this relationship can be saved, it is often very salvageable. And I've seen this from almost every type of affair, from very long-term affairs to a very brief something that occurred in a one-night stand kind of way. But the important thing is that you try to avoid it by checking in with each other, and that will save you a lot of grief down the line. See you next time.